I mean, it's kind of hard to know what to talk about because I didn't really want to talk about, what is RPA, what's the business case, what are the opportunities, because I think most people in the room, have more than a strong idea of that. But what I was thinking about was, what does this really mean for us as individuals? We're all hoping we're, going to live for a long life. Retirement is something that's never going to happen for many of us. But how do we stay relevant? What does the future look like for us? And RPA is an incredible entry point in many ways. But really, I was thinking about was how do we stay relevant? What does this journey mean for us? And I came back to these kind of three words that I think they drive me in many ways of what I do. But this whole business about being aware of what the market can do. Being aware of all the exciting stuff that people talk about, all the technologies, all the kind of future stuff. And that's all very well and good, but then it's this translation to say, well, how do you turn this awareness into kind of knowledge, information, something I actually apply. So when you're talking to your colleagues, your clients, your customers, you actually can apply your knowledge in a way that's not just a high level, it's just taking it to the next level of detail so that, you're talking about actionable activities. And actionable knowledge that really won't start to make a difference with all this thing you're aware of in this brand new exciting world. And the third part, which I think is probably the most important part, is around timing. You look at the story of Blue Prism or Multiplication Anywhere being around since 2002 or 2003, and only now starting to get traction. And again, I've worked with clients who've bought IBM Watson licenses, and then fundamentally, it was a great idea, it was fantastic, but when they brought it back to the organization just didn't know what to do with it because they just hadn't really thought through they saw the dream, they saw the opportunity, but actually actioning this kind of knowledge and this opportunity was really, hard. So this is what drives me is, this timing is absolutely critical. There's no point being 5 years too early or 10 years too early to a market because you've got to be in tune with where the market is. But I'm an optimist by heart. Anyone who speaks to me will always hopefully feel the optimism. So I wanted to call this the good news presentation. But actually, it's the mainly good news. So as a warm-up, this is our warm-up good news. Obviously, I'm Scottish. People leave Scotland for many reasons. They all start with W. Women, work, and the weather. So when you come to Amsterdam as a tourist, and I've been here many times before, Dave and I came here on Sunday, and this is actually the guidance I was given. So this is my warm-up good news. The required clothing was lightweights with rainwear, waterproof, and all year round an umbrella. But if you think that's bad, this is Scotland. This is Glasgow. And it's really hard because actually Glasgow they're not calibrated the same way. Glasgow is like up here. So the next time you're complaining about weather or rain, it could be worse. So that's kind of the message. Your warm-up good news story is Glasgow is worse. The other part is, that there is the opportunity with these technologies to really drive value. I mean, if you go back to the 1990s, late 1990s, and the whole dot-com boom, every organization that put this or said they were a dot-com, rocketed in value, and it was complete, bullshit because it was tokenism. But really what the opportunity is this is really technology that does drive a difference, does make a difference, is actionable, you can put it into place, and it will drive value. And as an example, on Monday morning, we arrived to do some RPA training with DPA. And by the end of Monday, the DPA share price had gone up 2.5%. And it's continued to go up since then. So a few hiccups around lunchtime on Wednesday, but I think that was the sandwiches that did that. But no, I mean, it's joking aside, and I know that we came here surreptitiously, but fundamentally, I don't believe we drove the value of yet. But the point is, once CEOs start to realize and the executives start to realize that this is stuff that can make a difference, then they're going to start realizing that this is things that they're going to start pushing down their organization. And at dinner last night, we were talking about the barriers of middle management, really not wanting to change, not wanting to risk their empire, not wanting to change how they do things, really protecting their career, thinking about the last 5 or 10 years of their career, and really being the roadblock. But once the C-suite, once the executives start to understand that this can really drive bottom level impact, and I'm not just talking about RPA, all these technologies can actually make a huge bottom line impact. Then my sort of the credit we get for this week's work, is kind of a small example, but this is going to really change how people think and how they drive it down. But the flip side is, and I was just talking to Jost a second ago, the timing for RPA is incredible. I mean, I don't want to go through the details, but this is basically unemployment levels across Germany, the US, the Netherlands, and with the other impact of, for the first time in like 5 or 7 years, wages actually going up because the starting to become a real labour shortage. So we're not quite at all-time low levels of unemployment, but you're starting to get tightness in big markets. So the option for a CEO or an executive, an HR director, they're going to have to realise that they're running out of people. And again, you add in a bit of immigration barriers, add in a few more walls, and actually finding the people to do the work. The opportunity is to add in Brexit. The finding the people to do some of these jobs is really going to be a challenge. So it's easy to joke about us impacting the share price, but the fundamentals for most organisations is you're going to be running out of people at some stage, and the economies have only started to heat up. So any serious executive is going to start thinking further ahead, 1, 2, 3 years ahead, and even look at short-term hiring issues they're going to have. And the options are people they can't find or automation. So that's, this is what tees it up. But in amongst the good news is the challenging news. First of all, none of this is going to happen overnight. But, all the studies say, hundreds of millions of people are going to have their jobs impacted. And there's going to be jobs that just disappear. It's accounts payable, claims processing. These jobs that just aren't going to exist in 5 or 10 years' time, or maybe 3, 4, 5 years' time. And there's going to be jobs that are just hugely impacted. So the brain surgeon is still going to be a brain surgeon, but he's doing the work with robots instead of a thing. But the point is, whether you're losing your job or the job's disappearing, or whether you're having a brand new way of doing the existing job, you're going to have to retrain. You're going to have to kind of continually be in this path of re-educating yourself, whether you're just starting your career, in the middle of the career, or the end of your career. This constant re-education. So some sectors are going to disappear. The opportunities of blockchain to get rid of, the middlemen is, huge, and I don't want to get into too much of that now. But job titles are going to go. Offshoring. Who cares? Will it happen? Who knows? But again, there's the opportunity. No more bad jobs. I'm a chartered accountant by training, and I've done some very bad jobs. Jobs which involved arriving at 8 in the morning to cut and paste for 4 hours just so that in the afternoon I could actually do my work. And Dave's got some great examples in the tax world. Where people, their job is basically to cut up PDFs, and that's only so they can start to do their job. So, the concept of no more bad jobs is kind of aspiring. So, maybe this is not necessarily challenging news, or not necessarily bad news, but really the opportunity. And again, I think this is the next challenging news. And we can look at it tonight. Where are the women? 1, 2, 3. Well, these are our statistics from the RPA Academy website. These are the visitors. So, good old Google tells you all these fantastic statistics. 29% of our visitors are female. So already you've got a disproportion. But less than 10% of our students are female. And I don't actually ask them, but this is, nor do we ask any questions, but that less than 10%. And this is the real issue that is, when you look at the jobs that are being automated, I guarantee it's not 91% of the jobs that are being, the jobs are not done 91% by male. It's probably 50-50 at best, probably in the opposite. So you do have this kind of bigger question of, women getting displaced in transactional work, which is now being automated by guys. There is this other subtext to this, which is that I would guarantee that probably 80% of our students, whether they're in Sydney, whether they're in Bangalore, whether they're in New York or Toronto, are Indian heritage. So it's fascinating statistics. This huge drive to, and I can't explain that without sounding like Trump. But I don't know what the answer is. But it's fascinating, this kind of like self-selection to these technologies. But it's a big issue. And then this is the kind of the perpetual piece, and there's two sides to this coin. The negative I'll talk about here, but there is no end to this. I mean, we can, everyone's talking about blockchain and Bitcoin, but really, it hasn't even started. I mean, there's the odd business that's using it, but fundamentally, the impact that Bitcoin or whatever or blockchain can have is seismic. And so businesses will disappear. So the point is, for all the things, I mean, even AI could split into a million different subsections even now. There is no end to this. But going back to good news, again, to me, there is no end is actually an attractive piece. And I would recommend, there's a guy called Oliver Mitchell who does a blog called the Robot Rabbi. And he's been writing it for about 7 years now, and he's very clever. He's very broad in what he covers. He's not into. There's no one area he doesn't cover. But he's very good company, very forward thinking. But we did a series of podcasts last summer, and I kept on saying, when we get to the end, and we talked about the end point. What is the end point? And he pulled me aside. He goes, Edward, there is no end. And to me, so that's why it's super exciting, that the days of you going to doing your job age 22 or 23 and doing the same job 10 years later or 20 years later, or a similar job, or being the manager, that is all going to really be challenged. It's not going to disappear, but it's really going to radically change. So again, the reason for going through this slide is because I think, we all self-select. We're in this room for a reason. We're all kind of, obviously interested in technology and all this kind of sexy stuff that can happen, but there's a reason for it, but how do we keep being interested over the rest of our careers? But this is, to me, the exciting part is there is no end, but it's also the challenge as well. But then how do you stay relevant? And this is kind of based on statistics that we've run out. One other thing is that Otto was talking earlier about the RPA jobs market here growing and the UK growing. In the US last year, it grew 63%. And just the figures we saw last week from the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's going to jump another 25% just in the next 2 months. So there's a lot. This is no longer talk or hype or visions. This is stuff that's really happening. So the question is, how do you stay relevant across the journey? And our training ranges from some stuff we do for free, some $95 classes. And the on-site, it could be a couple of $1,000s, which starts to be real money for people. But the flip side is, what does it mean? So, but if you're actually able to pay $2,500 for your training, and they earn $10 or €10 extra per hour, then you're talking about a payback period of 4 weeks. If it's only €5 extra, then that's two months payback. But the point is, staying relevant isn't impossible. You can do it online, you can do it live, you can do it recorded, so that the excuse about it being too expensive or not being right for me or too difficult, that kind of drops off. And so I think, as we think about the journey going ahead, that staying relevant just becomes essential. And I think the more we get frightened by potentially bigger numbers, the less relevant we're going to be. And that 800 million people being impacted, that's not a one-off impact. Someone who's, but again, the brain surgeon example is probably a good one. Their job's going to change continuously over a multi-year period. So it's not like you do the training once and suddenly you're relevant for the rest of your life. This is an ongoing thing. So I think, to me, the good news is that this is not impossible. I'll come back to something else in a minute. The fourth part is, and this is the best part of it all, is you're not learning from scratch. So the brain surgeon is not going back to medical school and start from scratch. I guess you've probably got 80% of the skills already. So if you look at an RPA project manager, if you take away the RPA part, these are project managers who are experienced in putting in complex systems. They're used to dealing with politics of organizations, running complicated projects. The RPA part is really, and it's probably not even 80%, it's probably another 10% of knowledge on top of where you are currently. So you're not starting from scratch. You're not learning from a standing start. So a developer, again, they're coming to the table with their C#, .NET, blah 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 background. They're not against with a blank sheet of paper. So to me, this is the good news: is that there should be no fear involved. It's not like you have to go back and say I have to start from the beginning. You really are just evolving your career with the extra bit of knowledge. And the part number 5 is this skills gap. I mean, this is the RPA skills gap. I mean, this is an illustration. I wouldn't, be too. I wouldn't use the numbers as gospel. Sorry?
Good news for whom is this?
For you. The skills, if people are just learning incrementally and the market's going like that, you can't create experience overnight. You can't suddenly, get 2 years experience. The experience is going to have to come from just getting great training and great knowledge. The good news is for anyone who's thinking further ahead and thinking about their careers, thinking about the marketplace, then the skills gap creates the opportunity in itself. If the entry point, if you've got 80% of the skills and knowledge already or more, if you can access the training and information to do that, to get to to understand the new part of your technology, and if you've got the awareness of what's happening in the marketplace and you're actually taking control of what's in your career, then the skills gap is good news. If you're not paying attention, if you're complacent, if you're thinking that your job's going to be there forever, then that's when it's a bad news for people. And the last point is really around, the scarcity factor. This does translate into numbers. The UK, for RPA alone, the UK salary numbers have I think doubled, 100% increase in salary rates over the last 2 years for RPA developers in the UK. In the US, it started to pick up. I think it went up about 15-20% in the last 12 months. So the scarcity factor does play into your pocket. So not only are the barriers to knowledge lower, not only are the opportunities exciting, not only do you have almost all the skills, if you keep aware of what's available, then this is going to pay dividends to yourself. So that was kind of my kind of 3 words, was that staying aware, keeping aware of the knowledge and thinking about the timing. Don't spend too much time working out how you do virtual reality for an accounts payable function. That's might be a nice thing to do late at night, but in terms of your career and managing it, focusing on timing, being aware of what's happening and having the knowledge to execute at the right time, that's what it is. So, we're back in Amsterdam.
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully everybody who's here will then recognize the skills gap. Immediately will go and retrain themselves by Edward. As we say, Edward is the premier RPA training platform. Does anybody have any questions for Edward?
Well, it's an interesting question, because one of the biggest challenges I see in the job descriptions that come out is you look at the job descriptions and they're looking for an RPA developer. So you look at the job description, and then underneath the job RPA developer, they've got to be able to liaise with the staff. Then they've got to be Lean Six Sigma. They've got to be able to re-engineer, and then they've got to be able to deal with change management and work with team. And you're like, hang on, that's not a developer role. That's like 4 or 5 jobs in the one package. So I'm all, and the poor person that gets that job, is going to get a lot of hands-on job experience. So to me, there's 2 separate roles there. Just in what you define there. There is the kind of the being the developer, actually doing the implementation, and the work that's essential to do up front. Which are around the kind of the process analysis, and potentially the re-engineering. And you're standing beside one of the experts who can. One of the classes we've just launched is called I&RPA, which is basically, instead of just automating the shitty process which was being done for years, you're actually automating a much more refined process. And I think that's maybe a bit of a purist approach, but the point is, if you're taking the time to re-engineer, to automate your process, it's worthwhile taking the time to re-engineer it. But from a developer's point of view, to me, the exciting opportunity is, well, how do you be a developer and actually understand everything around it? So rather than just being the developer who does what he's told or implements a pre-designed process, he actually takes the time to understand, well, hang on, what is the business case for this? What is the real business process? What is the business driver for this process? So they get out, but for a developer, that's a real challenge because they're used to sitting behind a computer, doing that. So I speak to all developers and say, look, you've got to understand the bigger business context because it's good for your career, it's good for you understanding what you're doing. So to answer your question, that's definitely two jobs in one. You shouldn't automate shitty processes, but most people are. And I think, the opportunity really is for the developer to expand their knowledge and use this as the excuse if they end up with one of those catch-all jobs. Rob's a great guy to talk to about this because there's a great book called The Lean Startup. And it's all based around how you apply lean principles to startup mentality. But the concept is, you don't have these hierarchies, you don't have these barriers. You just kind of, and it's a very quick read, but it's a great read and it's very instinctive. But it just, his hope is just getting to market faster with your implementation. So you knock down the barriers. It's not, I don't know if the Dutch phrase, but it's Chinese. We call it, in Britain it's Chinese whispers. In American it's the telephone game where you pass the message from one person to another person. But if the developer's at the end of that chain getting the bit of message, then he's not going to really understand what's driving the message. So that's why flat, lean, small groups, empowered developers. It's all key to it.
So, for instance, you're a life insurance company. Yeah, your systems are already 30 years old. Yeah, they're creaking at every moment. Yeah, and ask any large insurance company in the Netherlands or abroad, like Incl or Nationale or Delta Lloyd, why they haven't fixed their 30-year-old systems. They're still working with COBOL and everything. Can they fix them? No, they can't fix them. Because there is not a new application ready to take that over. And if it is, you have to put 30 years of history. So their RPA is going to be a 30-year trick for them. The only way they can fix it is actually what you see Incl, for instance, do. They're just building a company next to them, which then slowly takes over 30 years. And hopefully then this new system is so good that it can take everything. Not only the pure insurance bit, but all the agents, all the commissions, all the other bits. And this one system, which basically takes everything, has yet to be developed, because we thought that SAP and Oracle were those answers. Yeah? 10, 15 years ago, everybody did SAP implementation. Every part of it, HR, finance, sales management, you make it. Everything was in there. Did that work? No. Do you think future application development will fix it? Hopefully.
Well, again, sorry to any vendors out here that the work fusion story is actually very interesting. I'm not saying they actually have got the answer, but they've got a very good illustration of how do you scale quickly. They really it's a big problem, for many organizations. How do you scale? How do you scale without adding a management layer or an extra management layer? And I'm not commenting on their solution, but just their interpretation of the problem was, for me, an eye-opener, because I hadn't really thought about it the way you described there. But it was that, how do you deploy them quickly in a way that doesn't just add layer after layer of supervision? And I mean, yes, if you change systems, that's life. You have to. There's nothing you can do about it. But in terms of just managing this growth, that's the big question. I think so. Anyone going into that has to be aware of the opportunities in the market and the supply. So the work fusion, I'm only mentioning them because as an example, they've thought about it. But all the other platforms are going to think about it exactly the same way. How they solve the problem of adding scale without adding an overhead. So there's no. I just think the suppliers are going to wake up to the issue, and already Work Fusion are aware of it. It is the whole problem about change. The RPA is not the first, technology to have to face this. You can go back hundreds of years, and it's the same issue. I mean, if I would turn it around to them and say, look, this is not about whether you like your job or don't like your job. It's about whether there's a job for you to do. And so you can actually, this is, what people want to do with their time is totally up to them. But if they are going to be complacent about that job being there in 3 years' time, or 5 years' time, or 20 years' time, then they're probably just ignoring, reality. So, I think that's one of the best things to hear, is that someone who's happy with their job and enjoys their job. So, there's no way you'd want to take that away. But the world does change around them, and it's we've all got a choice.
Okay, thank you all. This was a very lively discussion. I would suggest still be around, mingle, network, drink. pizzas. Thank you.
Excellent.